We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
Good morning, everybody. I had been normally going into the office to do this, and it was just too cold to get up and go outside today. So I decided to sequester myself in the back bedroom, and me and Missy the cat are right here. So we are ready to roll. I want to welcome everybody here. If you're in the sanctuary, welcome. It's always nice to see faces. If you're listening on the radio, glad to have you tuning in. And of course, if you're listening to this later on a recording, the welcome is just as strong then, whatever time and place you get that tended to. So right now we're going to just reach out and say hi to each other on the right. Awakening Together is a universal assembly of peers dedicated to recognizing and embracing universal wisdom, regardless of the form in which it appears. We are also dedicated to recognizing the ways we deny universal wisdom by adopting personal beliefs and biases. We want to recognize these limitations so we can free ourselves from them and open to the continuous flow of universal wisdom. And our purpose is we are an assembly of equals, joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols. We seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. And I have chosen core value number 3. We accept one true self, which is one presence or being, a non-dual, without beginning or end, and absolutely changeless. We live this value by practicing letting go of the belief in the individual self as who we are. So now we will go into prayer, and I am going to use my favorite prayer from Way of Mastery. It really helps me center. So let's join. May Christ alone dwell within and as this creation I previously thought of as myself. May Christ alone inform each thought, each choice, and each breath. May love direct each step. May love transform this journey through time, that within time we may come to know the reality of eternity, the sanctity of peace, the holiness of intimacy, the love and the joy of the Father, prior to every breath and prior to every thought that arises within the mind. Father, I thank you for this time together. I thank you for this prayer. I ask that stillness speak through me as I let go of the noise of the mind and rest with you. May we all hear what is most helpful to us today as we join in you and in love. Amen. All righty. And now we will have our reading. Miss Jackie is going to read to us from Inner Ramana, and it is the section titled clarity on practice. So I want to thank Jackie so much for being willing to read for me this morning. Nice to see you here. And the mic is all yours.
Good morning, and thank you for asking me. Clarity on practice, February 26th, 2009. Question for the inner teacher. Teacher, I would like it if you would speak to me more about resistance to the practice of mantra and surrender. Answer. Resistance is not your true nature. When you think you are experiencing resistance, you are forgetting yourself and identifying with the mind. Ask, who resists this practice? Notice the mind resists. And if you believe you resist, then you believe you are the mind. The stillness and peace within do not resist. Ask the question then, what am I? And await the true answer of the heart. Question for the inner teacher. For the last 24 hours, since listening to you last, my mind has been a madhouse. But the second I sat to listen to you this morning, the madness melted. It literally dissolved in your presence. Would you please speak on this with the purpose of teaching me to surrender? Answer. You recognize that the ego dissolved in my presence. This is always the case. Darkness disappears, literally disappears, when the light shines on it. The question is not, does surrender work? For obviously it does. The question is, what is surrender? The mind thinks it's you, and you think you are the mind. When the mind learns that what I teach and tries to practice it, that is not surrender, because that is holding on to the idea that you are the mind and the mind is you. And through the efforts of the mind, you can do this. The mind can never do this. It cannot take you to realization of self, because false identity with mind is the obstacle to realizing self. If the efforts of surrender are not in the moment, quieting the mind and warming the heart, it is because you are not in that moment surrendered. You are listening to the mind. Surrender is a decision to put aside mind completely. It is recognition that the answer cannot come from the mind. It is quitting the mind and turning to higher knowledge for guidance without any lingering thoughts that through the ideas and education of mind, you know what to do. Watch for the thought that through the ideas and education of mind, including prior education that has come from me, you know what to do. Whenever you listen to the thought that you know what to do because of prior learning stored in the mind, you are not surrendered to me. Surrender has no prior knowledge it can depend on. Surrender must always turn to me. In this, you will feel the heart open and the ego dissolve. What am I to do now? Ask this question 1,000 times per day, and you are beginning to learn the true practice of surrender. Because the thinking mind is attached to you like skin, you must allow me to become your second skin. See me as your newer, stronger, and more vital skin. See the ego's skin as becoming old, worn, and useless. Let me be your second skin by asking me what you are to think, how you are to see, and what you are to do. Do not depend on prior learning or knowledge. Do not judge me by the mind's standards. To do this is still to rely on the old skin. Stick to the new skin and let it guide you freshly, surprisingly, in each new and untarnished moment. The purpose of the mantra is to still the mind. It is like turning or tuning a radio dial from the egoic radio station to the station that I am. Both stations use the mind to communicate, just as two radio stations use one receiver. But the egoic station believes you are the radio receiver. My station realizes the radio is only a means of communication. The purpose of the mantra is to change stations, to tune in to me. And repeated use of the mantra will help you to stay tuned into me. But once our frequency of communication has been established, you link to me, become one with me by asking me to guide your every thought and action. Question for the inner teacher. Teacher, may I summarize how I am to use the tools you have given me? And will you correct any misunderstanding that I have? Answer, yes. Question. When the mind is active as me, or when I think I am the mind, I use the mantra to return to the heart and my remembrance of you. And then I ask, what am I to do? And I remain surrendered by asking this question 1,000 times per day. If I find resistance and I believe that I am resistant, I question the source of the resistance. Then I remind myself, that I am not the mind through asking. What am I? When I am free of identification with the mind, I say the mantra to reconnect with you. And then I surrender fully by asking, what am I to do? Inner teacher, yes. Questioner, I see I have not been doing that. Thank you. Inner teacher, your lesson for today is one of continued looking at who you think you are. This is the false identification I thought, or false identification with the mind. Both ideas are the same, and both ideas are false. This idea is the root of illusion, of all illusion. And so, this one thought must be relinquished if one is to be free of delusion. An idea is relinquished by looking at it, by challenging it, by seeing it as false. Since the idea of ego has been deeply learned through repetition, deep and consistent unlearning must result. So now we will add the practice of questioning to practices I have already taught you. Question for the inner teacher. How shall we add this practice? I'm afraid it is too many practices and I will forget. Answer. That is how we shall add the practice. When you notice yourself having an I thought, question who I is. This is so you will notice the identity attachment. You cannot relinquish what you failed to notice. But when you notice it, you will relinquish it. Because this desire, which is false identity, is not your true heart. And you are listening to your true heart now.
Thank you, Jackie. Beautiful. Thank you. And I love how this ends. It is not your true heart, and you are listening to your true heart now. You are listening to your true heart now. Doesn't matter if I was not listening to it in the past. I don't know how often I'm going to listen to it in the future, but I know right now I'm listening to my true heart. And I'm grateful for that. I was just prompted to read the thought of awakening today. out loud. It was very helpful to me. So that's what we're going to read, and then I will share a little bit about my experience first at the retreat, which was incredibly helpful in getting in touch with that true desire to be in the heart. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the reading and the actual practice. It was kind of like what as I was looking back over the retreat weekend, it was like preparing, right? It was like packing for a trip and the things you're going to need on this trip. And it was wonderful to consciously take that time to clarify desire and to set an actual plan for how you were going to use those tools in the future that you uncovered. So it was the preparation, and then the practice is actually is game time. So we'll talk about both of those things. So this is Thoughts of Awakening number 313. It came out in the digest today. It's for Gentle Healing 2. And it says, stillness speaks. The thinking mind does not. The thinking mind chatters, but chatter does not speak. Speaking is clear and beyond words. Speaking is the guidance of wisdom. Listen to speaking and do not worry if you cannot explain yourself to others. Do not worry what they think. Follow speaking in trust, and you follow the path of wisdom. So that was good guidance as we go forward. All right. So one of the first things that came to me at retreat, which was some notes that I took. Regina had threw a question, I believe, of someone who was participating, and she was speaking about past experiences, past spiritual experiences, and kind of trying to see how to view those, which has been something that I have needed for quite some time. And so she was speaking about, having those experiences where that seem to be just grace, and there's no real effort needed in those moments. Things quiet on their own accord, and truth is realized and experienced. It appears to be kind of spontaneously. And so she was sharing this experience, and then it appeared to me that having a hard time bridging those experiences within this preparation work and what seemed to be planning and organizing and I don't know, pre-planning our practice, basically. Anyway, Regina had shared that it sounded to her like those experiences, at least in this gal's experience, were callings. That that was their job, is to call us to truth. And that was very helpful to me, in that I have often clung to these kinds of experiences as if they were truth rather than experiences and callings. And how that helped me was by helping me to let go of the past, obviously, because that's not helpful. And then it was kind of addressed a little bit in this reading from Inner Ramana. It was having to let go of things that you think you know, even if initially they came from me, that you may have gotten guidance before, and so you think how spirit would talk to you in this situation, or how guidance would move you in this situation because it did so in the past, and having to let go of that. So one of the things I did, just a little bit of journaling on my own experience, and how to frame that so it doesn't get in my way. Because the reality of it, for me, hanging on to those old experiences was, well, I'll just read this. Just read. It says, so, spiritual/mystical experiences were callings. That is what Regina shared, which was very helpful to me. I heard that ring deep within. So in my past, I can see that it was in my ignorance I thought that these callings were instead arrivals. I see that they were states of mind that needed no tending to. They were just rest. They were just joy. They were just moments of connection. There was some revelation, but mostly it was just an experience of being only love. When they passed, I mistook it as a failure of some kind on my part to not be able to remain in that place. So for the last 30 years or so, I have misunderstood those callings, that they were just callings. They were callings in saying, come, join with me, purify, and remain. So the last 30 years have not been wasted as I reframe this. These experiences, they turned me, and that turn led me. And it led me to this opportunity to now purify and remain. So having misunderstood experiences in the past and thinking that thinking that they were arrivals, right? I mean, it is kind of an arrogant ego that would hijack that kind of a spiritual experience for sure, and try and tell me that I was all done, right? That I would just live in that peace and that state of calm forever, and not have to engage in a practice of some kind. So once that was cleared out for me, it opened things up quite a bit for me to begin doing some of this work that we did over the weekend. So I'm going to share that. One of the things that was extremely helpful was we spent quite a bit of time working on our aspiration and our spiritual aspiration and what we wanted. In order to come to the clarity that was most helpful with that, Regina has us spend an awful lot of time looking at all of our desires. And regardless of our judgment of whether they were, quote, spiritual desires or worldly desires or whatever it was tugging on our attention, really, that is what needs to be looked at, because it's our believing attention given that becomes our practice, whether it is conscious or unconscious. So bringing some of that stuff to light was very, very helpful to me. So in that process, we listed just a whole bunch of desires, what we wanted. And then if we found ourselves with conflicting desires, which sometimes does happen when you have these worldly goals, we were able to pause and really go into that desire and see what was really underneath it and what was motivating it. Helen shared asking the question as we were looking at some of these, especially around the weight issue, always wanting to lose weight. Helen asked the question for really any goal, what is it that you would feel if you had that? And that could, by kind of funneling down and tuning into that, we could see that it was not necessarily the goal on the surface that we truly wanted. We were seeking a feeling. We were seeking that sense of whatever that might be, worthiness. For me, it's often it's worthiness, but it is a sense of being desired, being loved, having a place. And so when you are able to kind of let go of that and move below it, then you see that I was able to see what I truly wanted was to heal a sense of unworthiness. So it was not necessarily the weight I wanted to lose. It was, I want to heal that sense of unworthiness. So I had to do that with a couple goals that were not conducive to my spiritual aspiration necessarily. So when I got my desires listed out, it ended up being these, I did want to learn and see the true value of meditation. That was important to me. To remember God and myself, that was a true desire. To heal the sense of unworthiness, and an internal quiet, peace of mind, and sense of safety. So those were the things that I was able to come to very congruently, wanting those things. And from that place, since those other things were kind of the conflicts were resolved, I could write aspiration from that place. So then we got to spend time with our aspiration, and so my new aspiration was to rest the mind in complete trust. So from what my understanding was about setting an aspiration in this context, we were talking about resolving for truth for the year, setting goals for the year. So Regina shared often that things would unfold as a result of this being set in motion, this aspiration. So everything that were to come into my experience, come into my awareness, could be used to, by setting this up front, could be used to make sure that I have many opportunities to practice it is pretty much how that all came down. So that's the ultimate truth. Okay, so if my aspiration is to rest the mind in complete trust, my work is going to be seeing the fear and seeing how my mind does not rest. One of the things that was brand new to me that I learned here for the first time, which was very, very helpful also, was we spent a lot of time looking at our aspiration and then finding the obstacles to that, right? So really taking a look at, in our experience, what gets in the way of resting the mind in complete trust, okay? And being very honest about that. We had resolved some of those desires and already knew that it's not necessarily the desire that's going to be the obstacle. It will be some behavioral stuff that will be the obstacle to practice, etc. So being able to take a look at the main resistances, the main obstacles to that. So the next list, for me, the obstacle to resting the mind in complete trust is not recognizing chatter as useless. So truly believing that the mind's chatter is helpful and that it would guide me. The next one was just forgetting what I want in the moment, forgetting that aspiration, forgetting what my heart desires as opposed to what my mind is once again after. Resistance to meditation and quiet. That is a big obstacle when your aspiration is to rest the mind in complete trust. Having to get very honest about where my current meditation practice is, which was non-existent for the most part, and having to come clean with myself about that, probably more than anything else. And then the fourth obstacle was filling time with entertainment, whatever that might be. So it looks on the face like entertainment, but it really is an attempt at escaping the noise in my head is what I truly use that for. I give my mind something else to focus on, and I don't necessarily hear the chatter quite as loud when I'm engrossed in something else. So, and then I had one more that was really pretty strong, and it was the belief or the fear of sacrifice. And that usually comes from this idea that I have to give up something that I believe has value to me, whether that be the safety of thinking, whether that be entertainment, that I have to. It's a very old idea of God and spiritual practice, but it is the idea that I have to give up one in order to have the other. And there's something about that belief that triggers a very strong grasping for me. So that is truly a big obstacle. So then we had our obstacles identified. And then we learned that from that is where we set goals. And this was, I thought, absolutely brilliant. And I had, done quite a few goal setting classes at work, and even in school. I remember us doing some of those in various settings. And no one had ever explained this piece so beautifully clear to me, was that you set goals are directly tied to your obstacles. So you set goals to help you overcome the obstacle. And that was quite a revelation to me. So if I had my list of obstacles, the first one being trust in the thinking mind to resolve personal problems. That was the obstacle. Then the goal corresponding to that is when I become aware that I am trying to solve a personal problem with the thinking mind, I will practice mantra and surrender and looking back at the I thought. So that is the goal that ties to that obstacle. Second one was trust. Oh, no, second one was resistance to meditation and quiet. And so the goal is to start a meditation program with an app, and then also just to practice sitting in silence. That doesn't have necessarily anything to do with meditation, just sitting in quiet. No TV, even no music, just sitting there and getting comfortable with not engaging in distraction. Then belief in the fear of sacrifice. The goal is to write myself a letter reminding myself of what I truly want and why I want that, and that is to be read when anytime fear of sacrifice is triggered. And then the last one was filling time with TV. And so that goal is limit TV viewing with a schedule and guidance from inner teachers. So the goal is to invite guidance in, even in that time that I would judge myself so harshly for, if I am watching some TV, if I am using that or whatever, to invite Holy Spirit in, invite inner teacher in, and practice letting go of the judgment of that. So those were the goals. And then we had to, the last piece of that was devising an action plan. So how are we going to put that into practice? And there was a lot of tools for that, but it was the action plan that made it extremely practical and practical, very practical and applicable in daily life, which is very, very helpful. And so once again, I mean, that whole weekend was designed just to do that prep work, basically, for what the practice was going to be. And for me, the main practices, and they're coming from where I'm at in gentle healing for sure, is inner Ramana's mantra, surrender, and looking back at the I thought. So the clarity on practice being so helpful for a couple of reasons. Early on in the answer, I mean, very early on, and when you're looking at resistance, and the answer being when you think you are experiencing when you think you're experiencing resistance, you are forgetting yourself and you are identifying with the mind. Ask who resists this practice. And I loved the contrast between asking the question who, and then in the next paragraph, asking the question what. So how it came to me was that it's going to be a who that resists, right? It's going to be Kelly's personality that's going to resist something, right? So it's a who, it's an identity that resists, and being able to ask that question right off the bat and start working on that separation of that identity is very helpful. And then when you are in stillness and peace, there is no resistance. And at that point in time, you can ask, what am I? That is that I am a what, right? I'm not a who. I am a what. I am the presence. I am peace. I am the awareness. And being able to rest and start recognizing the difference. For me, I need to recognize that difference between that mental chatter and that sense of who I really am in awareness and presence and peace. Recognizing that the ego dissolves in presence. And then it clarifies that we use the mantra first to break the attachment to the mind. That is to quiet mental chatter. So we can then surrender. So then we can surrender. So the mantra comes first in breaking the sound of chatter. And then in that, we would be able to be willing and in our heart place to actually ask for guidance and follow it. So we're not being led around by the noise in the mind. Let's see. What am I to do now? Asking that question. And earlier on in a Ramana, it does share what's entailed in all of that. So when you ask, what am I to do now? It includes asking, how am I to see this? How shall I listen? How shall I be now? What am I to hear? What would you have me know? What is my perspective as given by you? How shall I respond? What shall I think? What would you have me see that I am not seeing? So all of those things are entailed in that question of what am I to do now? And then it says, ask this question 1,000 times per day, and you are beginning to learn the true practice of surrender. So right there, that sentence alone just freaks an ego out. It absolutely freaks me out. It just does. So it's the reminder that is the time for the mantra, right? That is the time. The ego is going to respond with a whole myriad of things in light of that sentence. I can't, there's no way I can do that. It's bigger than me. It's too much. And the truth is, it is too big for the mind. It is. So that's why we have to get out of that mind space in order to do that. I love the idea of the thinking mind is attached to you like skin. You must allow me to become your second skin. And it does take practice to undo the deep conditioning that has gone on prior to coming to a practice. And love tuning it, liking it to a radio. Regina did a talk. I don't remember which one it was, but it stuck out to me. It was it might have been through one of her first rounds of NTI, but she did talk about WEGO, WEGO, and WGOD as 2 radio stations, and I love that. Which station am I tuned into? That image has always been helpful to me, and the idea that that the ego thinks it is the receiver, as opposed to something that is just filtering the communication. Oh, it's time. Oh my goodness, can you imagine that? Kelly actually went a little bit longer than normal. Woohoo! All right, so that is all I have right now. I do have a nice song too, and it's kind of a long one. So we will listen to that. It's kind of a very meditative. It's Oceans by Hillsong, I believe, and I just love the meditation time at the end. The line in there, Spirit lead me to where I trust without borders. I love that line. So we're going to listen to that, and this is the opportunity to donate, and I'm sure Dawn will put in the information for that, and we will contemplate a little bit on our aspirations, etc. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to get back to you guys. Okay. So, apologize for the going over a little bit. We won't have to do a closing song because that one probably took up the time. So, we do have a couple minutes if somebody wants to share real quick, and then we'll close at 9:30. And a reminder that we follow this service with fellowship with George, so we can certainly carry it on through that time. So anybody like to share? I can't see anybody, so you're just going to have to grab the mic and go. All right, then let's go ahead and we can close. And I want to thank Dawn, of course, for always being here and being so helpful, and Jackie for reading. I really appreciate that. And of course, just for all of you, I love you tons and very grateful for awakening together and all that it gives me. And so that is all I have. Much love to you all. We'll see you again.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.